who are super optimistic about Trump becoming president in the context of Israel and thinking that he will completely change policy as opposed to maybe, as I was saying, not be as bad as Biden, which is not really what you would aspire to, or at the very least that you would aspire to. We're quite shocked with the hostage deal being the first thing that Trump did before he even became officially president. And the man who is credited with that is his envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff. We've heard reports and we've covered these reports of Witkoff basically strong-arming Netanyahu, that's a nice way to put it, into having that deal in place before Trump is in office. And yeah, that raised Steve Witkoff's profile. Hopefully disabused people of the notion that Trump will do what's right, even if he does less of what's wrong than his predecessor. And yeah, it made us curious about this new envoy. What are we? What should we expect from him? Now, we wanted to do an episode about him. Luckily for us, the Israel Advocacy Group, Israel Advocacy Movement YouTube channel did a video that is very, very good. There are things in there, specifically opinions that we disagree with, and I think we have some stuff to add. But that video is about a 5-minute long video, and it's very good. So we're gonna go through it, and we're gonna try to see why is it that Steve Witkoff is so surprisingly for many of us, surprisingly on the Palestinian side. Welcome to the Daily Objective. Daniel, any thoughts before we go into that video?
Well, just sort of a slight correction. He's a special envoy to the Middle East, which is I believe it's a special position that was established specifically for him, or was established by Trump for Steve Witkoff. So that might be something to sort of take in context, as well as this is, depending on how you take, this is not the first time Steve Witkoff is in Trump administration. In 2020, he was part of I have it here, the specific name. It was called the Great American Economic Revival Industry Groups, which was again like a group created by Donald Trump specifically to combat the COVID-19 sort of economic sort of downturn.
How'd that turn out?
Well, the economy was booming during Biden administration, or at least stock market was. But who knows who caused it? And I don't know what this specific group even did or how much power it had. Then also, before we go to the video, because basically, sort of to tell what it's going to be about, it's a possible, conflict of interest coming on to corruption. And something to remember when it comes to corruption or people who sort of get bought out, something to remember, it's similar to when we discuss Tenet Media and the conservatives who were paid by Russia. Oftentimes, it's not that people give you money and you change your mind. It's you already have a certain opinions that are going a really wrong way, and someone is willing to pay you to keep those opinions. So
Yeah. Before we go to the video, this is kind of a spoiler for the video, but Alex says in the chat, he has business dealings in Qatar, so he's borderline retarded. If you can't see the game that the Qataris are playing with you, you're engaged in the worst kind of evasion. Yeah, that's the problem. He's not retarded. I mean, he's morally maybe retarded, but he's an intelligent man who knows what he's doing. And yeah, unfortunately, that makes him much worse. But let's see what the Israel Advocacy Movement found out and had to say about this man. Can't hear.
sorry.
I couldn't hear that. I don't
Wait,
know if
really?
our audience could, but if I couldn't, they probably couldn't.
How about now?
The envoy here.
Yep.
Could you hear? Yeah, okay.
The envoy here just got back from the Middle East, and he's done a fantastic job.
Love or hate Trump, one thing is undeniable. He's been an incredible ally of Israel. So when he appointed Steve Witkoff, a billionaire Jewish property mogul, as his Middle East envoy, like most people, I just assumed that he was a friend of Israel. But then I heard him say this about the Gaza ceasefire.
We've got some people really doing, God's work at that negotiating table. The Sheikh Mohammed, the Prime Minister of Qatar.
For those that don't know, Qatar is Hamas's biggest financial sponsor. Every month for the last 6 years, they've delivered suitcases filled with millions of dollars to Gaza. Every single month. But it doesn't stop at money. Qatar's state mouthpiece, Al Jazeera, floods the airwaves with pro-Hamas propaganda, brainwashing an entire generation against Israel.
Ethnic cleansing,
apartheid,
collective punishments,
crimes against humanity.
And as if that wasn't bad enough,
Wait.
Qatar is literally...
Okay, that is bad enough, but yeah, first of all, one point of disagreement. He said something like, whatever you think of Trump, you can't deny he's been an incredible ally of Israel. Well, of course you can deny it. I mean, that's the problem with looking too much at the other side. Again, compared to Biden, that's not saying much. And he did some good things in his previous term. But again, Iran wasn't dealt with. Right now, Trump has said that he hopes Iran can be dealt with non-militarily. Non-militarily, he knows, means buying them off. So, yeah, buying them off and again, keeping the regime in power. So kind of postponing the inevitable to hopefully it not happening under his watch, which is a very politician-like thing to do. And like we said, he's not a career politician, but he sometimes very much acts like one. Yeah, Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I love the whitewashing of the Qatari state. The Prime Minister of Qatar. Prime Minister of Qatar is an appointed position by the Emir of Qatar, which is a hereditary. It's a kingdom. It's basically like it's on the sort of aspect when it comes to, and Prime Minister of Qatar is the second strongest or most powerful position. So already, and that's what was said by Steve Witkoff, Prime Minister of Qatar. So again, trying to put Qatar as some sort of let's say friendly government or some sort of government that has similar values than we do. No, it's like I don't want to specifically say totalitarian state, but it's an authoritarian state. It has no, my understanding it has no sort of elections for these positions, and so should be taken as so. And the fact that we are dealing with them as, as our allies. I mean, Qatar is I think a special ally to United States or NATO. I'm not sure which one specifically it is. So yeah, I mean. And it's also true that they are helping Hamas insanely throughout, since October 7 and before. I think he'll go more into how they're helping, so we can cover it more there.
Yeah.
But yeah, looking at Qatar as any sort of, friendly government it's funny at the very least.
Yeah, and we'll also go into some of Witkoff's personal dealings and why they matter. But yeah, when you're talking about a country like that, remember, as you said, you're talking about a dictatorship. And by the way, when he says they're doing God's work, I don't necessarily disagree with that. But I'd rather they did, humans' work, work that actually benefits humans rather than benefits somebody's imaginary friend and the people who serve him. Or them. So yeah, this is already, should be a scary development, and it gets scarier. Let's hear some more.
A safe haven, a place of refuge for Hamas's leadership. Want proof? Look at this 2019 meeting between Ismail Haniyeh, the recently departed head of Hamas, and Sheikh Mohammed. The same Sheikh Mohammed that Witkoff was just praising.
The Sheikh Mohammed, the Prime Minister of Qatar, really doing, God's work.
So, why is Trump's envoy heaping praise on Qatar's leadership? I dug deeper, and what I found raises serious questions. So, let's look at Witkoff's past. In 2013, he led a consortium of investors that bought the Park Lane Hotel in New York for $660 million. In 2017, he tried to flip it for $1 billion, but no one was buying. Then, in 2018, his name appeared on a list of 250 of Trump's allies that Qatar was targeting to try and sway US foreign policy. They obviously knew who had Trump's ear, but how they persuaded them to lobby for Qatar, well, I'll leave that to your imagination. And now for the twist. 5 years after appearing on that list, he then conveniently sold the hotel to Qatar's Sovereign Wealth Fund for $623 million. Is that coincidence? Qatar targets Witkoff, and then a few years later, they save him from financial ruin? I tell you what, at the very least, it's a serious conflict of interest. I'm not sure how anyone can trust Witkoff to represent US interests when he stands to gain so much from Qatar.
All right.
Just listen to
I
him
want to
praise
I
it.
want to pause here because first of all, you have to remember when Qatar invests in something, it's not like when a normal person invests, whether it's, $1,000 in a stock or 100 grand in a, property or $1 billion in a hotel. But just somebody who's living in a relatively free country. This is a foreign dictatorship buying up chunks of a Western semi-free country, and we know, and we've talked about this a lot as well, that they do more than just buy up property, because they think it'll earn them a profit. They buy. They invest in universities, they invest in media that either their own media or media that is directed towards Westerners. They very much invest, as the leader of Hezbollah said, and Qatar is doing, I think, a much better job than Hezbollah in this. They're investing in changing minds in the West. And which direction do you think they're going to change those minds in? The direction that ultimately ends up in something similar to what the Qatari dictatorship currently is.
Yeah, I mean, just something to mention, the Qatari Sovereign Fund, or I think what is officially known as a Qatari Investment Authority, it was established in 2005 to manage surplus of revenue. Why bother giving it back to citizens when you can keep all the money and use it to gain influence around the world? And in this case, I mean, we don't know if, but at the very least, I mean, again, this is someone that is directly in Trump's administration, someone who managed an investment group that bought a hotel that was later sold to a Qatari, and it's a state controlled investment, the investment fund. It's not like some private businessman. Although when it comes to Qatar, even when private businessmen, it's they are not usually that much separated or that far away from the government itself, but it's the government itself straight up buying that. And after they bought it, he became a part of Trump's administration and broke this deal, which is something Qatar wanted for pretty much almost since October 7, or has been working, helping Hamas to get, as well as the Qatari state-controlled media, Al Jazeera, going on against Israel pretty much since it started existing, especially when it comes to this war. So this is like, it should be pretty obvious that this is at the very least something like deserving an investigation. Like, we have someone who basically got paid and then did something on the favor of that government. Now, again, these two things could be unrelated. They technically, they don't have to be related, but it's obvious that any sort of huge conflict of interest like that has to be at the very least like investigated. And if we don't see anything, well, something that people have been saying, like Trump needs to fire this guy. Well, Trump hired this guy. This was known about him. Like this Qatar deal that happened. I mean, when was it? 2023. You could say maybe Trump learned that later because Witkoff was also part of Trump's administration in 2020. But this is a new administration. This is not like what is the what is the Trump's, he wants to flush out the swamp, right? So is Witkoff the swamp? So what is he doing in Trump's administration still? Like again, he cannot, like Trump cannot like hire these people and then blame those people that they have like failed him, or they did something he didn't want to. Like he knows who this guy is. You cannot like hire someone who might be in the pocket of Qataris, then he does something that benefits the Qataris and not the American government, or not sort of what Trump wants to do, and then say, "Oh, hey, that guy didn't do what I do." Well, you hired him and you knew that. Like, take some responsibility.
Yeah. Enric says in the chat, Trump is interested in how he's perceived. He has no principles towards Israel. Yeah, and I remember, thinking before the election, that is bad, but there's a worse option, which is people who are principled about Israel, like Biden and Harris, and we know what their principles are. But yeah, with Trump, it is a game of, Russian roulette, and not because he's pro-Russia, but just because you don't know, is he, what exactly is he going to do? And again, we see policies that are more favorable towards Israel, but then we see this, this hostage deal, and what we hear is a push for stage 2 of the hostage deal to be implemented, which of course, again, we talked about the idea of Hamas disarming. That is not going to be a thing, but it could be a thing on paper that people look the other way, and looking the other way could very well mean having Qatari peacekeepers and whoever whoever Witkoff's friends are, being the ones to what do you call it, to enforce it. All right.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Well, one of my biggest problem when it comes to sort of designating people as pro-Israeli, something I'm really worried about is not the fact that Trump is not pro-Israeli, but that Trump thinks he is currently pro-Israeli, because he said, "Well, I'm getting the hostages back. I'm stopping the war. I'm putting Israel in peace. I mean, what's going on? I'm being pro-Israeli." That's my sort of worry, that the problem here is not really that he's not pro-Israeli. It's just that I mean, not just him, but people don't know what Israel actually requires. I mean, Israel government itself, by accepting this deal, is being anti-Israel, and when Israel itself is not pro-Israel, how can you expect of someone else being? So that's why. That's why this is also like sort of like scary situation, because Trump always thinks he is doing the thing that he's supposedly be, like he is making America great by going and doing the things he says he does, because it's not sort of putting an Ayn Rand concept here. It's not primacy of existence that you look at reality and sort of from that devise what are the principles you need to follow. It's pure primacy of consciousness. It's like, well, I'm great, so I'm doing the things, and I want to make America great again. So whatever I'm doing is going to make America great again, and that's sort of the thing he follows. He doesn't, in a sense, he is not accountable to anything. So,
all right, let's watch some more of the clip.
Them at their economic forum.
Qatar's a very is really impressive. We were talking about it before.
A few months later, his son Alex, who along with him runs the family business, spoke at a different Qatari event, set up by, you guessed it, Sheikh Mohammed, the same Sheikh Mohammed his father was just praising. Sorry to interrupt. I was just editing this video when I realized I deliberately left out a point that I probably should have included. So are you ready for my hot take? Here it is. Is it really sensible to have billionaire businessmen as diplomats, particularly if their wealth is dependent upon raising large sums of capital, potentially even from the very nations that they're negotiating with? Maybe that could be a conflict of interest. I don't know. Feels like one to me. What happens if the national interests are at odds with their personal interests? Clearly, these billionaire businessmen have more to gain financially than the ordinary diplomat would, which is why I thought it was relevant to this video and worthwhile calling out. But as I've interrupted the video anyway,
All
if you'd
right.
like to help us make more like
Great time to pause, because yeah, this is why the pro-Israel movement needs Ayn Rand and needs objectivism, and you see what happens when it doesn't. What's not sensible is having a government that isn't limited just to the protection of individual rights. And then you have clarity in situations like this. First of all, you don't deal with a country like Qatar at all, not diplomatically, not when you're trying to solve a military conflict, not when you allow investors to invest in your country. You don't allow foreign dictatorships to invest in your country. That's not something that a free country should do. And yeah, problem solved for people in the pro-Israel movement who would like a government that is bigger than it should be, or has more power than it should have.
Yeah, I mean, people talk about the sort of the corruption of the congressmen, the senators, or whoever, basically the people who make laws and the way they invest. I believe there's like a famous ETF which tracks as Nancy Pelosi, basically whatever investment she makes, it just replicates it. So and I've heard it's done relatively well. But yeah, it's like trying to come up with devices to sort of account for that is already a secondary issue, because the problem is the fact that government is involved in any way. It sort of reminds me, there is this game called Suzerain. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Suzerain. And in that game, basically, you are leader of a nation, and at one point you get to decide to build a highway, and you are deciding which company to use. You have like a choice of three companies, and one is a state company, one is a private company, and one is a private company that offers you a bride. And now, how do you make the decision? You can come up with like technical things, but already the fact that there is even a potential of a bribe, like I could pick that company and not take the bribe, and it's like, well, I'm already basically violated. Like already in my mind, I have the idea that I could gain like a personal benefit. There is no way to properly decide when it comes to a sort of like state control of economy. Even when it comes to sort of being in private world, it's hard to really pick like which when we work at ARCUK and we pick product to do something, it's hard to, without using it, without trying many different times, it's hard to exactly know what is the perfect one. But the difference is when we make it, the only consequence that are being suffered is by Razi, who's the owner of the company, and the people who actually have the stake in the company itself, who actually did something with it and will suffer both the rewards and the consequences. When it comes to the country, how do you ever decide? I mean, there's this idea of like stakeholder capitalism that you can like when you make a decision, you can like grab all the stakeholders, basically like let's say you want to build like a factory. Well, you ask all the people who live in that area, all the people who live in like in the approximate area, and it's like, how do you ever make the decision that like equally benefits everybody, or that has like a positive impact? It's not even that it's impossible, but it's inherently like violating rights of some people. Because as long as, when it comes to something like eminent domain, as long as one person disagrees with it, you are violating his rights. You are uh, moving him out of his house because, there is this like higher goal you want to achieve. And that fundamental goes against any idea of liberty, any idea of, property rights. So, the way to fix this corruption issue is not to like come up with devices like, well, maybe we put all their holdings into trust, or maybe they cannot like invest while they're in government. No, you just get the government out of economy.
Yeah. Yeah, you get the government out of economics, and you get the government into the uh, field of national security, or into doing it properly. And then again, when it's a country like Qatar, look, Qatar, I think it would have been clear before October 7th, but certainly on October 7th, was absolutely a legitimate target, if not a necessary target. Because what you saw on October 7th, while the videos of the atrocities were coming in, and of the terrorists live streaming themselves, we also got videos of Hamas's leadership in Qatar. Now, that is not a country that's certainly not an ally to the West. And it's shocking that the way Qatar is being treated by the West as if it's an ally. But it is an active enemy. I mean, America went to war with after 9/11, instead of going for the proper targets, it went to war with the country where bin Laden was. That was the target. So by that token, Qatar should have been the country attacked on October 7th and afterwards. But unfortunately, that's not the kind of leadership we have. All right, let's. I think the next thing he's doing is asking for support. Maybe we can skip that. Although, of course, we encourage you to go see the video, and if you want to support them, go ahead. Yep.
Witkoff wasn't the only person praising Qatar. Here's Hamas's newly appointed leader, Khalil al-Hayya, showering praise on the Gulf state.
We also express our deep gratitude and appreciation to the brotherly mediators in the dear state of Qatar and the dear Republic of Egypt, who made tireless efforts and conducted multiple rounds of negotiations since the first day of the aggression to reach this moment.
Now, this might all be one massive coincidence, or maybe he even got the job because of his connections to Qatar and the UAE. I don't know. But when Trump's main man in the Middle East shares the exact same praise for Qatar as Hamas, it leaves me with one question. Whose interests is he serving? Let me know what you think in the comments below.
Yeah, I definitely don't think it's America's interest that he's serving. And again, look, whenever we criticize Trump or anything to do with Trump, we get people complaining or saying or saying, what about Biden? Trump is president. He will be held accountable. And again, I will say what I've said in the past. I hope we get to praise him every single day. Unfortunately, that doesn't look like it's going to be the case, hasn't been the case. And if he does bad things, you will hear that here. This is not a conservative pro-Trump YouTube channel where, we'll praise what he says one day and then the next day he'll say the exact opposite and we'll praise that as well. No, we want a better world, and Trump is in a position where he can make that happen. And so far, the appointment of Steve Witkoff doesn't look like it's a step in that direction. Parting thoughts, Daniel?
Well, when it comes to sort of judging politicians, I mean, when we sort of covered Trump, let's say week before, people said, well, give him some time, in leading role to see what he does. People are forgetting he was already president, and so we can like judge him on something. And also, it's important to remember people are sort of like to some extent like in some ways integrated beings. I don't necessarily mean by that all of their ideas are sort of in cohesion with each other, but they don't just do like random stuff. They're not like random like number generating, like, oh, today I'll do like a great thing and then I like commit genocide or something. You know, like crazy examples. But Trump, in effect, hiring Steve Witkoff does absolutely sort of work with the kind of person he is, because he is someone who doesn't really have any principles. That's why he can do this, and then he can, you know, in the past, recognizing the Golan Heights or moving the embassy to Jerusalem. Like, yeah, it can happen. Like, how do you like? Yeah, anything like that can happen, and you should not be. And that's on some level that's still problematic. It's good in a way that we might get some good stuff, but it's bad in the way that you know, we have no idea what's gonna happen. Like for like it's only been it hasn't been, you know, even a week since its inauguration. And I already feel like it's been like a month. Like this is kind of insane. Like so much stuff has happened.
Yeah, yeah. As I mentioned, I think what's definitely going to be easier under Trump is for us to come up with topic ideas, because he is giving us more of them than we have shows. Thank you, Alex, for the super chat. Alex says, it's actually pathetic how little Westerners know about the Arab world and culture. These are savage tribes engaged in clan warfare and blood feuds. Well, it's what's really scary is that in some places it is imported, certainly in the UK, and we people still refuse to know it, as in refuse to believe it, even when they see it in front of their eyes. Yeah, I guarantee you, many of the people who cry about Islamophobia in London would not visit the parts of London that I wouldn't visit, because we are not sure we'll make it out alive. And yes, Daniel, I know you're smiling because you think, okay, looking like this, I should be able to visit those areas. But yeah, I don't know who watches this YouTube channel. So, all right. All right. Thanks, Daniel. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We are back tomorrow with a daily objective and the reality show. See you then.